to be respectful of both of your time and the time of everyone who's participating with us. We are recording this evening. I hope that's okay, so that we can share this at a later date if needed with our greater membership. But I want to thank everyone who is here participating with us. We are so incredibly honored to have both Congressman Newhouse and Congresswoman Schrier with us, representing the 4th and 8th Congressional District. This is a bipartisan town hall. It's really exciting that we get both of you here with us this evening. So thank you. We have, so those joining us know, submitted kind of a general outline for the evening with them, so they know some of the hot topics that we're hoping to hear from them on. So they have come prepared, which is great. As time allows, we will do some Q&A, but we're asking that participants put those questions and answers in the chat function, and we'll get to as many of them as we possibly can. So we want to start tonight just with a welcome and a greeting and just an opening statement. We don't know what your life is like right now. New Congress is going, you're a few months in, new administration. And so, just tell us a little bit about yourselves. Not everybody may be familiar with you and where we are in this wonderful land of the federal government. And since Congressman Newhouse, you were the more senior member of the delegation here, I will let you go first. Usually it's ladies first, but we'll let you go first.
All right. Well, I appreciate that. And thank you very much for having me. It is, I hadn't thought about that, but I don't usually participate very often in a bipartisan town hall. So that's just a great experience, and maybe we'll do more of them if we enjoy them. How's that, Kim? Because it makes sense, really. Even though Chelan County is not in my district, it seems like I spend a lot of time in Wenatchee. You gotta go to Wenatchee to go up north, and so it's natural that to do so. And a lot of the issues that are important to people in Chelan County and certainly in the Wenatchee area are important to my constituents too. So I hope you don't feel like I'm crossing over your line too often, Kim, but we share a lot of similar kinds of issues, and so it makes sense to work together. So, gosh, you asked some pretty big questions there about how's the new Congress and Washington right now. You wouldn't. Those of you who, obviously that would be almost everybody that haven't been to Washington, D.C. over the last year, you would, if you went today, would see some big changes. I think they've pulled it back now, but over the last couple of months, we've been negotiating with about an 8-foot tall fence around the Capitol campus with concertina wire strung on the top of that, and anywhere from, well, the peak of over 20,000, but recently 4,000 to 5,000 National Guardsmen. You couldn't walk anywhere without bumping into olive green. So that's been a very different Washington, D.C. And so hopefully that will get back to normal soon as time moves on. But you're right, we have a new administration and new things to learn about their priorities and direction, new people to educate. I find these times of changes in administration, now we've got a whole new crew to familiarize with Central Washington, and to learn about our issues and the things that are important to the people that I represent. And so that takes some time to getting to know those new people. And become making them familiar with things that are important. So that's what we're kind of in the process of doing now, even still. As the president is still does. I don't know how he's pretty close, but I'm not sure if he has his whole team in place yet. They're still getting people confirmed and all that. So it's an ongoing process, kind of here at the beginning. Lots of new legislation that we've been working on. Lots of new direction with the political dynamic, but still a very interesting place with, and that's kind of an understatement, I suppose, Kim. It's been very interesting the last couple of months. A lot of big things have been happening. I can point to if you don't mind me bragging just a little bit, I was very happy that we were able to pass some very significant legislation. Maybe we can talk about it more as the hour moves on. But as you know, the agricultural workforce is very important to our ag industry, and we were able to pass off the House floor just last week the Ag Workforce Modernization Act, which I see that as a great step forward in addressing some really critical needs of our agricultural industry. So I look forward to working with the Senate on making that a reality and getting it to the president's desk finally, which would be the first true major reform of our ag labor laws since 1986. And that's, I'm not popping any champagne corks yet because we're not there, but I'm feeling better and more optimistic about it this time around. So,
Congressman, that is
looking forward to.
That is on our list to talk to you about, and I think both of you have been on that piece of legislation, so we do want to hear about its future and how we can help it get across the finish line in the Senate.
Good, but I'm anxious to hear what's on business people's minds in Wenatchee and surrounding area, and how we can team up and help in any way we can with some of the priorities that you have. So thank you for inviting me to be a part of this town hall, and looking forward to it. Thank you.
Well, Congresswoman Schrier, how are you enjoying your, was this the second term reelected? Yeah?
Second term.
You decided to do it again. Woohoo!
Of course I did. Are you kidding? I get to work with Dan. So first of all, sorry, I shouldn't be so informal. Representative Newhouse, I am feeling bullish about the Farm Workforce Modernization Act. I think it's a great bill. I'm thrilled we worked on it together. I think it's going to get through the Senate, and it's going to get the president's signature. And so I'm reading the tea leaves and feeling good about it. And I think it's it's some real evidence that even though people think that Congress is broken, we never talk to each other, things aren't working, behind the scenes, a lot of these bills that are really important but aren't the headline grabbers, they're getting done. And I'm back for my second term. I'm delighted to represent the 8th district. I feel very fortunate to have a district that resembles the state and resembles the country, because it helps me appreciate all perspectives, business, agriculture, tech, you name it. And it gives me an opportunity to work on important topics like immigration and farming with my colleague Dan, who I can't stop calling Dan. How about we just make a deal? Okay. You call me Kim and I'll call you Dan, and then it'll even make Congress feel friendlier. One of the things I'm really happy to see now is that we're seeing what happens when government can function. We do see a lot of obstruction, and we came in, met the moment, got things done. We have a big COVID relief package. Hopefully people are feeling optimistic about shots in arms and dollars in pockets, and what this will mean for families with kids and people getting health care. I just am very proud to see government function and come to the rescue at a time when we need it to come to the rescue. I'm also thrilled that I am once again on the Agriculture Committee, because it's a great way for me to make sure I'm serving the eastern part of my district in North Central Washington, to go to bat for our farmers, but also to pursue nutrition programs that are near and dear to my heart as a pediatrician. And I have also now been appointed to the Energy and Commerce Committee, which is a very exciting place to be right now. We have jurisdiction over, it seems like, everything. And certainly healthcare is right up my alley. So to be able to have that platform to talk about vaccines and testing and what will keep our schools safe and how we move to clean energy and supporting hydropower, all of these things are now in my committee. And so I'm thrilled to be back for a second term, and hope to continue to earn the confidence of the people in the 8th district.
Thank you, Congresswoman. I think that's a good point. You mentioned some of your committees. I wouldn't say that most people on the call with us here tonight really know what committees you all are probably connected to. It's a lot different than where I cut my teeth in government, which is at the state level. Your committees are very big and have subcommittees and all of that. So maybe you both could spend just a quick minute just kind of outlining what committees you are on and a little bit about what you might see come through there. You did a great job, Congresswoman Schrier, kind of talking about the magnitude of the Energy Committee that has a lot of jurisdictions over different things. So if you could add a little bit to that, Congressman, and we'll go back to you, Congresswoman Schrier, here too in a minute.
Sure, that's great, because that's something I'm very happy about there. I started out my first term on the Ag Committee, and I was on the Natural Resources Committee and Rules Committee. And I came to the realization that the one place that you could really have a lot of impact on, like Kim said, or Congresswoman Schrier, that for me was the Appropriations Committee. So I've been on that committee now for, it'd be my third term. And I sit on three subcommittees of that. Energy and water is one that's very important for our district, for our state. All of those issues are, a big part of the Pacific Northwest's economy, obviously. I also sit on the Legislative Branch Committee, which is kind of an inside, making sure that the whole Congressional machine works. And it's been kind of a sleepy little committee up until this year, because we have jurisdiction over everything about the Capitol campus. And so I mentioned the security measures that are in place and the Capitol Police Force, and all of those kinds of things are front and center big issues for us right now. And then the other subcommittee I'm on, was one I wanted from the beginning, but I finally got it this term. I'm now on the subcommittee for agriculture. So just like Congresswoman Schrier, that gives me a great vantage point to stand up for those priorities for our agricultural industry. So.
Great, thank you for that great explanation. Congresswoman Schrier.
Well, I just want to translate. So what that kind of means is that on the Agriculture Committee, we pass the laws, and then Dan puts money behind them. So it's really a great partnership. And, this is how we were able to work together on the Yakima Basin Integrated Plan. So Dan's on appropriations, I was on agriculture. We're both from Washington State. It's an issue that matters to North Central Washington. We went for it. So anyway, I just want to show everybody the crossing paths and how we're all intertwined. And on energy and commerce, on agriculture, the subcommittees, one of them is biotech and horticulture. Actually, that is my only one now, because I dabble in forestry, but I'm not allowed to have too many subcommittees. So that's it right now. In energy and commerce, I'm on health, which covers health, energy, hydropower, other sources of energy, clean energy, all that, our energy future, and oversight, which is oversight. Yeah. Making sure things are going the way they should be going.
Very good. Well, thank you for both of that great introduction and a little bit of information, not only about how the process works, how you guys are working together, but where you're serving. That's fantastic. So we've given you 4 areas that we think are important. Some of them are not surprising. We also gave them to you because we think you can excel in them based on what you both have passions for and your backgrounds are in. And then we think that this is something our community wants to hear. But like I said, for the audience listening, thank you for remaining on mute. And you don't have to have your videos on, but I know people love seeing your face. It's a lot easier to talk to live audiences, a whole bunch of black screens. But we do want to save time for question and answer. So if you do have a question, feel free at any point in time to put that in the chat function. Sasha is here with me, helping me monitor that. And so when we get to that portion, we will bring those up. So of course, everything, we've been talking about it for over a year now, COVID. Congress has taken some swift action. There's been 3 major relief bills totaling about $5 trillion. I didn't even know a trillion was really a number. I don't know how many zeros is behind that, to be quite honest. It's a lot of money. It's a lot of money. But it's out there. We're using it. We've depended on it through PPP, especially our rural hospitals have depended on it. Our schools have depended on it. I mean, it's been available to many folks, and you've been very responsive and helping us make it easier for the PPP loans, for example, to get forgiven. So thank you in those processes. But couple questions we have is, number one, what do you see next in the COVID response? Do you see Congress focusing on anything particular? I mean, it's been a huge focus on vaccines, but before, when we talked a while back, Congresswoman Schrier, you're talking about rapid testing. So what's emerging as we relate still to responding to COVID and even some ancillary aspects that aren't necessarily caused by the disease, but by just the impacts of the pandemic? What do you see coming to us next, or what do you see Congress focusing on related to the pandemic? Either one of you can jump in. So let it be a free for all.
So
You want to start,
go
Congresswoman?
ahead, Kim, and I'll take it second if you want to go start first.
You know, I am hoping that this big bill, was our last rescue bill. You know, my expectation is that in this bill, we put a ton of money into vaccinations, getting vaccines in arms, getting these mass vaccination sites up and running, having the public health infrastructure to get it done, bringing in the National Guard even to administer vaccines, because that is what is going to bring us to a point where we can look at this, I mean, if not in the rear view mirror, at least to have control of the situation. And so rolling out the vaccines quickly is critical. We're really in a race against variants, basically. And which leads me to, I guess, my next point, because you said, you know, where are we going next with regard to COVID? One of them is, I think testing is still critical. You know, if we get a variant that isn't prevented by our vaccines, we need to have the ability to test quickly, cheaply, at home every day, because then you can stop this disease from spreading, because it's spread by asymptomatic people, which makes it particularly tricky. And so I'm really pushing for some of that money that we allocated for schools to be used for rapid tests, so that kids can be tested a couple times a week. And we can really know if COVID makes an appearance in the schools and take those kids out so they don't spread it to others. So I think that's one of the next things. But then the other, just while I'm on the topic, and then I'll yield to Dan, is that I do think we need to think globally about this virus. There has been a very inward-looking perspective, I think, everywhere in the world on you know, let's protect our country. But I just would like to bring up the notion that we have now basically ordered more vaccines than we can even use in this country. And there's something that's really important about that, because what we're seeing is that variants happen when the disease spreads. And so the more this disease circulates in the rest of the world, the more at risk we are that a variant will show up here in Wenatchee that won't be prevented by our vaccines. And so I just want to make a plug for the US stepping back into its leadership role and helping the rest of the world overcome this as a way to protect the world, but also to protect ourselves. And also, you know, we could use bringing back that diplomacy and soft power around the world as the US being this force for good in getting the world past this. Go ahead, Dan.
Good points, Kim. So I think, Shiloh, for what I would expect to see, of course, it wouldn't be limited to these things. I think what Kim brought up were very good points as well. But I think two things for me it boils down to. We should really be focusing on safely getting kids back in schools. I think we have seen so many negative impacts of the closure of our schools. It's going to take a long time to recover. I'm afraid, I don't know this, but I'm afraid we're losing students that we may never get back. Some school districts are reporting that up to 50% of the kids have gone absent on the virtual learning situation. And I hope we can get them back in the system and get back on track. You know, there's just so many negatives associated with keeping kids out of that really important environment. So that's got to be a focus for us moving forward. And fortunately, with some of the new CDC guidelines, that can happen, I think, sooner than later. And we're starting to see that already. And we just have to really make sure that schools have all the resources they need to accomplish that. And then the second big emphasis I really think should be to get our Main Street businesses back up and running as strong as they possibly can be. That's gotta be a priority. You know, the negative impacts there. You guys could know this number better than I would, but how many businesses have we lost in our communities throughout the state, throughout the country? And that's going to take a long time for us to recover from as a nation, our economy, but also those individuals that impacts. So that to me has got to be a huge priority to get those businesses back up and running and open. You know, it never made sense to me from the beginning, not to pick on any individual store, but why the big box stores could be open, but the small, smaller businesses downtown couldn't be. I think we've learned a lot over the last year on how we can do things, follow all the safety protocols and all that, and we'll have to continue doing that because we're not out of the woods yet. But I think we are much smarter than we were a year ago, and I think that the path is there for us to get kids back in school and get our businesses back up and running. And I think a lot of the good things that will happen from that will be coming very soon. So that's my perspective.
That's
I agree. I mean, I think you're absolutely spot on with, the whole point in this rescue plan was to help that final bit of rescue, right? There's $1.8 billion coming to schools in Washington state so that they can open safely, get those kids back in. It sounds like 3 feet apart will work, which means basically a regular classroom again. They can pay with that money, they can pay for rapid testing. They can make schools the safest place, get those kids back in. There's money for mental health services. And I think all those kids will come back. And I also think that we're going to have to do some rethinking. This is not in my purview, it's not in Congress's purview, but I think that we do need to be thinking about how to wisely use our summers to make sure that our kids catch up and remain competitive and don't have summer slides on top of everything else. And I'm so pleased that this last rescue bill had even more help for our small businesses, particularly for restaurants that have suffered disproportionately.
You both brought up something that's very important, and we're acutely aware of it because of recent events here locally, and just a lot of struggle around getting kids back in school, but their mental health. That's a huge focus. We are seeing a massive mental health crisis. I see David Olson on the line that runs Columbia Valley Community Health, not only serving some of our most in need populations, but has an incredible child mental health program that our community has relied on for years. But that is a crisis that we are deeply concerned about, and we don't even think we can really understand the scope of what we're experiencing yet. And so do you see anything coming from Congress or even a White House initiative not only manage the mental health crisis in our K-12 system, but just like you talked about, what Congresswoman, managing our summer times better, how do we ensure that a generation of learners is not lost? Do you see any focus happening here in the coming months, or even, I would say the next year, on how do we tackle those big issues of growing, our kids' learning ability back? I'm thinking of OMAC, Congressman. When I first looked at the statistics, 50% of their kids in OMAC were not reporting for school. And that's an impoverished area as well as a weak broadband area. I mean, so what do you see in those two areas that we should be aware of and maybe join you in the fight to get more resources here, or just even awareness here locally?
So you're absolutely right. I guess it's my turn. Sorry, Kim, to go first.
You guys are doing great.
But, okay. Well, even before the pandemic, I think the shortage of mental health professionals in schools was acute, right? If that's the right word, there weren't enough to go around. The ratios, if there even was a professional in the school, where the workload was so immense that it was overwhelming. And now, like you talked about the fact that I hope we're not losing a generation of learners. Oh my gosh, can you imagine that? I hope that is not the case, but it's going to take a lot of work to get them back. It truly will. I think it's just like, and I'm stepping into your wheelhouse here, Kim, but we have a shortage of physicians, but we also have a shortage of mental health professionals, and that was before the pandemic. So I think stepping up to address those shortages, it's not a quick fix by any means. I don't know if there is a quick fix, but we have to be able to come up with solutions that bring more people into the profession. I think that the things like the teaching health centers are good. The graduate medical education is good. And there may be other things that we could do to encourage people to go into those fields, not only for mental health, but obviously representing largely rural areas. That's an issue that we're finding in all medical fields. So I wish I had an answer that would fix it tomorrow, but and I'm anxious to hear from some of the folks on the line if they have some ideas there. But I think looking long term, we really need to put some focus on those things that we can teach people, and when we teach them in the areas where we need them, they do have a tendency to stay and set up practice in those areas. So yeah, that's about all I can come up with there, Kim. It's up to you now.
Well, I agree. I think that underlying all of this, even before the pandemic, we needed more counselors, social workers, mental health professionals, not just in the schools, but outside as well. And this is a place where economic incentives can push the needle, right? If we say, hey, we're going to do loan forgiveness for people who go into fields of mental health and serve in underserved communities, whether that's rural, inner city, you name it, that is a way to incentivize that path. And so those are the kinds of things that Congress can do. And in the meantime, I just, there's a lot of talk about the mental health crisis. I'd like to drill down on that a little bit. And I'm happy to even hear from David Olson, because I know he's right in the thick of it, that it's not a blanket issue, that different populations, different kids have been hit in different ways. And so, of course, if your family's lost in income, then you have an anxiety and depression. If you aren't connected with broadband and you can't participate in school, you're isolated, you have mental health issues. If you've lost relatives because of this disease, then, and then there are other kids, who you don't hear about, who are actually thriving, the ones who have social anxiety and they don't really thrive in school, and they're doing great when they study from their bedroom. So I just think that we need to target the help and understand where it is and get the resources where they're most needed. And if David, if you want to chime in, I see you on my screen. You're welcome to.
We'll unmute you, Mr. Olson, if you would like to share some thoughts. Can you unmute him? Sasha's unmuting you, or you can do it. Oh, we still can't hear you. You're unmuted. But there you are.
Okay.
Oh, you muted yourself again. Hold on. It's okay.
All right.
There you go.
Here we
Perfect.
are. All right. First of all, I can't think of two stronger supporters of healthcare and our communities in Congress than these two individuals. So thank you guys for what you have done, sometimes behind the scenes as it relates to helping healthcare people serve our communities. We could hire 10 new behavioral health providers and it probably wouldn't be enough. By the way, we have around 30 now. Here is what I would try to say in summary. We are trying to be as creative as possible, especially in regards to the schools and the kids. One of the things we're trying to work on is making sure that every single school no matter where they are in Chelan and Douglas counties, has the ability to allow their students to access either us or Confluence, we don't care, healthcare services via telehealth.
Mhm.
In rural communities, telehealth is absolutely critical. And so when we talk about improving broadband and Wi-Fi to especially communities that struggle economically, our Latino community, but any community that doesn't have those resources, I think that's huge. I will say this though, I would love to have, more behavioral health folks accessing the National Health Service Corps, where, loan forgiveness and things like that. That would be huge. But I'll just finish by saying, in some ways, we're putting Band-Aids on a problem. I think everybody here knows that healthcare is only a tiny part of health. If someone's homeless, if someone's parents have both lost their jobs, those kids, no amount of counseling will help them. We need to take care of the acute and the chronic issues, but at the same time, we've got to instill a sense of safety and hope. And that's where the whole community comes into play. This is not just healthcare's arena, it's all of our arenas. And if there is anything we can do to balance the needs to provide health care with the needs to promote health and wellness, then that's how we'll get ahead of this. And sorry for getting preachy there at the end.
No, I really appreciate that.
I was going to say,
Yeah,
David, you gave us a little bit of a segue there to something that is in this rescue bill that addresses exactly what you're talking about, which is, it turns out that if you look at poor kids, they don't have the brain development, academic success because they are living under stress, like chronic stress. One of the things we put in this bill, recognizing that it is exactly those kids and those families who hurt the most, is a change in how the child tax credit works. And this will help 93% of kids in this country. So this is a tax credit that goes to everyone who earns, within the income limits. And it's a check to the parents for up to $300 per child per month. So if you're a middle-class family, that extra bit of money helps you with childcare, affording the after-school care that allows you to keep your full-time job. But imagine what that money means to you if you are at the lowest end of the economic spectrum. It's kind of like Social Security, right? The people who benefit the most, what makes the most meaningful difference, are seniors who are close to being in poverty. And it's the same thing with this child tax credit that is like Social Security, but for young people. And the idea here is just that if you can bring those kids out of poverty, all the science is that you get better brain development, better academic success, less incarceration, better academic and job outcomes. And so it's kind of a groundbreaking way of addressing exactly what David just brought up, the fundamentals for these kids.
Those are good points, Kim. And if I could add on a little bit to what David said, Shiloh, what I've seen, the tremendous positive impact of the teaching health centers. I think that's got to be a way to increase the number of professionals available to us. We've seen so much success there. And another point, it's amazing. This is our world today, but I've been on a half a dozen Zoom meetings today. one of my first ones this morning was the TRIO program that is helping a lot of low-income minority students attain further education. And I think that touches on what David was talking about and somewhat Kim was talking about as well. And wanted to point out, I'm very proud. I went to Sunnyside High School, go Grizzlies. So sorry about that little rivalry thing there. But there were a young lady talked about the fact that she's the oldest of all the kids in her family. Nobody had ever gone on past high school before. She graduated from Stanford University with the help of this TRIO program. And now one of her siblings is also on track. It's attending Stanford. And I think David touched on something there, that there's got to be, in many of these families, there's got to be hope for the future. And there's no single pronged approach to solving these problems. There's a lot of different things that are available that we can maybe help strengthen to give them more ability to reach more people. And so I just wanted to, it's kind of interesting how these meetings do kind of
blend in.
connect together. Yeah.
Well, David also made a mention, which was an important topic. We're going to shift a little bit into healthcare because we just went from healthcare. So we'll keep you in that mind space. But he brought up telemedicine, and that is something that is really important to our healthcare partners here. The ability to not only be able to use telemedicine, but be reimbursed for telemedicine through Medicaid and Medicare. As you are familiar, we have high populations on both of those that help fund our local medical system. And so what do you see for the future of telemedicine and its ability to bring healthcare to more rural communities?
I lost track. Is it your turn or my turn?
We'll start with the doctor in the room. How about
Okay.
Congresswoman Schrier?
Well, I feel like I'm just walking into this one. This is so important. This has been a game changer for medicine, for patients, for doctors, for the whole system. It was actually here in Washington State. Dan and I were on these calls with the Hospital Association, with the governor. And so we really pushed CMS to have pay parity, so the same pay for an office visit and a telemedicine visit. That happened here in Washington because we got hit first. And then my bill, which was Healthcare at Home Act, made it into the first COVID relief package. So the same thing, so we could have that across the country. And telemedicine's here to stay. There's no question about that. We've already had a committee hearing on that in Energy and Commerce. Some of the details have to be worked out, but I don't think anybody's going back. And I think it's really important until we have broadband everywhere to also have that ability to use the telephone, not just video. And so that is, I will fight for that. Put it that way.
Great. Congressman, anything to add?
Well, not a lot other than, we had telemedicine prior to the pandemic, but certainly what the COVID-19 has shown us is how much it can be utilized. And I agree, we're not going back to where it's just very limited in use. I think that people have come to really appreciate, it's not the only contact that people should have with their healthcare provider, but it certainly can augment the care they receive, right? And it's, and like I keep talking about my rural district, and Kim's isn't that much different, and the distances people have to drive sometimes in order to get to a healthcare facility. It really is a game changer, and Congress should step up to do just what was mentioned, making sure that those contacts are reimbursed at the same rate, and that there's equity in the payments for those kinds of services provided, because it has been such a great benefit for people. And so I'm a huge supporter of telemedicine. I think that's one of the things that, like I said, maybe as part of the silver lining to the COVID-19 cloud.
Great, thank you. Well, let's move into agriculture, because medical is obviously a big part of our community. Agriculture is the major driver. Congressman, you have had many, many experiences in the agricultural world, not only from generations of farmers, but being the head of the Department of Ag here locally, and then going to Congress and always being on the Ag Committee. So I know you'll have a lot to share, but one of our questions was, could you tell us more about this Farm Workforce Modernization Act that you just referenced? Not all of us are touching agriculture in this community, but agriculture surely touches so much of what we're doing. So what are the major changes? Like, what gets you excited? Because you both are very excited about this. So what's happening in this bill that is significant that the rest of us are like, oh yeah, that'd be great, we should know about, because we don't know. So tell us.
Well, we only have 20 minutes, so
Yes,
there's
true.
a lot going on. So there's a couple pretty good things about it, and just to be, it's a long bill and a lot of details, and it gets complex, but it basically does three things. Okay, first of all, it recognizes that our current workforce, many of them are what you could say document challenged, and so we're giving our current workforce, people that are already here that can show a history of working in the agricultural industry, an opportunity to get right with the law, so that they can become here on a legal basis. And that's I'm not saying we're giving them citizenship. That's not the case. But we're giving them an opportunity to become eligible for a visa that allows them to work here legally, and then, novel concept, allow them to go home when the work is done. And then when the work begins again, allow them to come here legally. It's not rocket science. It's something that many other countries do, and we just haven't been able to get to that point. So it provides that. Secondly, and there's a lot of details in there, I know maybe people will have questions, but secondly, it streamlines and makes it more efficient, makes improvements to the H-2A program, which is the temporary agricultural labor program, a visa that we have. And a couple of really exciting things there. One, right now, if you're a farmer and you provide full-time employment, such as a dairy, you do not qualify to utilize the H-2A program. So there's a lot of employers here that are having critical shortages in their availability or their ability to get enough workers. And so this opens up that visa program to them. And that's probably the meat of the bill there. And so I'm very much summarizing that in a small way. But and then the last part of it is the electronic verification system. So that if we have these laws, we want to know who's coming across our borders. We all agree that border security is important. And we have a legal source of workers for agriculture, then it makes sense to enforce those laws. And so the E-Verify system is a way to do that. If someone applies to work on your farm, you can check through the electronic verification system to make sure that they're here legally, and then everything's great. If not, then that individual is not qualified to work. And so what that will do, if people know that they can't come to this country, sneak over the border and get work, I think that's going to reduce the pressure on our border for people coming across illegally. We're making a process available to them. And I think that's what people really want. Farmers, everybody I know wants a legal workforce. Every farm worker I know does not want to live under the fear of being deported. And so this is really a win for both parties. And if this was an effort, now I'm sorry to go on for so long, but what I'm excited about this, and Kim touched on it, this truly was a bipartisan effort. Republicans and Democrats, the ag employers, ag labor, worked on this. The original bill, which passed in 2019, it took almost a year of hard negotiations to come up with this legislation, and it passed on a bipartisan basis, which I think is a really good thing. And then we sent it to the Senate, and guess what happened? The COVID-19 pandemic came, and everything else just kind of lost its ability to move forward. And so here we are again. We got it passed last week, and it's on to the Senate, and we're hoping we can perfect it there. You know, senators do what they will do. They're going to have to put their fingerprints on it. And then I hope we can get it to the president's desk.
Thank you, Congressman. Great update. Anything you would like to add, Congresswoman?
You know, of course, Dan said all that needs to be said about that. I did hear an interesting idea for an amendment for the Senate to consider, which is that if you have a farm worker who is nearing retirement, say they are 62 years old, and they really would have trouble putting in another 4 years to get that legal status, that perhaps there should be a carve out for people after a certain age. So we will let the Senate take that up. And you probably already thought about it in the hard negotiations. You know, I think the other thing I would say is just that I was really happy to see just today that the USDA is designating $12 billion for agriculture. And $6 billion of that is really directed towards small and medium farms, and that is Washington State. And it is good to stand up for and make a lot of noise to make sure that specialty crops are represented on the Agriculture Committee, because otherwise they get overlooked. And to always be that voice. In fact, if there was one thing that I wanted to see in the relief bill that wasn't totally quite in there, but something very similar did make it through, it was, you know, a way to get food directly from small and medium farmers to food banks. And we got an iteration of that. And then today's news, I think that $6 billion will do very much what was in that priority.
So I don't know that
So the good news is we beat the Senate to the punch. Zoe Lofgren and I, who is the co-sponsor of this bill, we had an amendment that went through rules, so it was easy to miss. But anybody that had a serious injury that prevented them from continuing working and fulfilling their commitment, or someone that aged out, I guess, is that the right way to say that, politically correct? You know, if you get, I can say that because of my age, right? But if the instance of an individual that you described, they would still be able to qualify for participating in this visa program. So we did amend that. It's in the bill now as it sits in the Senate.
That's fantastic. Alma Chacon is on the line. I'm not sure, Congressman Newhouse or Congressman Schrier, if you're familiar with Alma. She is the executive director of CAFE. She's been a huge partner and a powerhouse for doing COVID response here locally, especially within our Latinx community. She asked a question in the chat that I don't know you'll be able to fully answer, but what I'd love to know is how can we get more information? She would like to know if those who have been undocumented, who've been working here for years in our farms and our packing houses, just in the industry, how this will help them. So I know the bill may have some more changes before it gets signed into law, but that is really important. CAFE does a lot of work with these folks. Norma Gallegos does a lot of work with these families. They are a huge part of the success of our community. So anything you can share on that would be helpful, or if you want to refer us to a staff person to connect with, that's okay too.
No, actually, that's a big part of Title I. The very first part that I described, it recognizes that we have a workforce, our current workforce, that many of them need to get right with the law. So there's provisions to allow them to do that, and the good thing about that, you know, we know that there's going to be people that are a little nervous about raising their hand and saying, "Hey, I'm here illegally." So it provides them I guess you could call it a safe harbor. They can come forward, start the process. It also gives the employer that safe harbor too, because you really, technically, you cannot hire somebody that's not here legally, right? So it provides that ability for them to come forward, get their visa application in, and as soon as they do that, then they again can go back to work. They don't have to wait for it to be completed. Having that application started gives them the green light to continue working. So that's a big part of this. You know, a lot of these people, she's absolutely right. They've worked here for decades. Some of them have spent much of their life working, you know, providing the necessary essential work to put food on our nation's tables. And we're recognizing that with this bill, the value that they provided to us and giving them that opportunity to, like I said, get right with the law. So that's why I'm really excited about this as well.
Awesome. Well, we hope that you will keep us informed as it moves through the process, as there'll be a lot of community partners that will want to engage and be ready to help folks in our community take full advantage of that. Thank you both for your work and your leadership on that bill. So I'm going to move in. I see some folks with the city of Wenatchee and East Wenatchee here. We're going to talk infrastructure. I love it. Yes,
Awesome.
Alma, it is great. Let's get this bill passed. I agree. So when talking with you, Congresswoman Schrier, you talked about the Biden administration within the first 100 days wanting a large investment bill. They've got it out there in the world, or at least the start of it. It's expected to cost about $2 trillion for 4 years. I think I should have done math in larger numbers. I'd have been more successful at it. Maybe I'm just, so a couple things that are interesting, but also maybe a little concerning that you can shed some light on. First, there's always the question of how the heck are we going to pay for all of this stuff, right? That if we pass a bill like that, now we're $7 trillion in, maybe that's just, budget dust for Congress. I don't know as much as you probably do about that, but part of that bill lined up with a campaign promise he had about not raising taxes for those that make $400,000 or less. Since then, the administration's kind of come back and said, well, we were thinking that was households. So one, let's start with the basic, like, is this infrastructure bill needed, right? Which I might be able to answer that for both of you. So that's the first one. But the second is, what would it take for you? What would you want to see in a bill like this for you to support it? Not only in kind of projects, but also in how we pay for it. So this could be a fun moment. We see a little bit of disagreement, but that's what it makes it great, because we have both sides of the aisle here represented. But is this bill needed? How could we responsibly, pay for it, and what might that look like if we were going to garner your support?
Heck yes, the bill is needed. It's critical, right? I mean, I think all of us would look back at the past year and think, by the way, trillion is 10 to the 12th. So it's a lot of zeros, but we much would have rather spent that money that we spent on rescue, spend it on getting America back to work. And that's what this bill does. Like, you got to come out of the rescue and then move on to back to work, build our infrastructure, build back better, as Biden says. We need infrastructure to be big. We should not just be filling potholes. We need roads, bridges, we need transportation. We also need our school buildings replaced, rebuilt, refurbished to make them good learning environments. We need broadband to everyone. So rural broadband is a big part of this infrastructure bill. Water projects, wastewater projects, clean energy projects, and a full electric grid with connectivity, so that you can have a bit more reliance on renewable sources of energy. So I'm just so excited about this infrastructure bill. Like, we've been talking about it for years and years, and we haven't gotten it to cross the finish line. And I think just people are hungering to have these projects like the Apple Loop finally just done. Like, let's get it done. Let's get rural broadband out there. So I'm thrilled. Can't wait.
We got a yes on this side of the house for infrastructure building. Congressman?
So there's no question that much of the infrastructure in this country needs attention. And we see it in our part of the country, but Kim and I spend a lot of time on the East Coast, and you don't have to drive very far outside of the city of Washington, D.C. to see highway infrastructure literally crumbling, rusting, and the cement's coming apart and that kind of stuff. Makes you kind of wonder if you want to go drive over those overpasses. But there are absolutely a lot of needs throughout this country. I've been pushing very hard to make sure that, and it's interesting how many things are under the definition of infrastructure. All kinds of things, as you can imagine, when there's potentially money available. But I think one of the things that has to be in there for the Pacific Northwest, for the state of Washington, is that important water infrastructure. Certainly communities, cities and towns need it, but also I'm thinking irrigation water infrastructure. Many of the important facilities that we depend on to irrigate our crops are 100 years old. And you know, we've gone through a lot of changes over the years. Certainly there's been maintenance and updates and expansions and all those kinds of things, but the condition of the things that we truly depend on, we need to make sure that they can stand the up to the uses that we expect of them. So, the $1 trillion question, Shiloh, you keep using that term, is how do we pay for it? That's the question. And I think that's probably why we haven't been able to get there. I think, when was the last time the highway gas tax was increased? I think it was 1993. And it's not an easy vote for members of Congress to take to increase those kinds of taxes. And there's other things too that people are looking at as far as how do you raise that necessary trillions of dollars to accomplish what we need to in the country. That's what the debate is going to be about. Do we need higher taxes? Do we try to do as much as we can as far as cutting unnecessary spending in order to make up the difference? One concept that I think bears a lot of discussion and debate is those private public partnerships that you hear a lot about. I think there's merit in looking at some of those kinds of things. So the bottom line, it's not going to be easy. And I think just borrowing another $2 to $4 trillion on the backs of our kids and our grandkids, I think that's, you know, we've done a lot of that over the last year, much of it necessary because we had to step up and make sure that our whole economy didn't go down the drain. But I think we have to be much more thoughtful about what we do for this necessary infrastructure projects. Absolutely necessary. But the key question is let's pay for them responsibly.
Great, appreciate that. Well, it would be I'd probably be slaughtered. Not gonna lie, if I didn't have a time to ask you both about that Apple Capitol Loop Trail project that you're talking about.
You would be. Yes, you would
Both
be.
of you have been huge supporters, signing on letters for that massive infra grant. It's a different transportation package. I think I read maybe 895 million available. So it's a very competitive grant. This is the third time the city of Wenatchee, with the support of all the jurisdictions in the region, because everybody's kind of got a project in there to make this thing sing and really revolutionize the transit system here in the oval, as I like to call it, the loop. What is your insight, if you have any? How do you feel about that project going forward? Is there anything the community can do to really advocate for its success? I mean, big kudos to the city of, I see Laura here with the city of Wenatchee, big lift to get that application in, but anything you can share with us about that project or just the nature of that grant?
So I am a big supporter, and you're right, Shiloh, you would be slaughtered if you didn't bring that up. I'm sure that's probably number one on the list as far as getting things done. Kim and I have worked together on this, trying to get that through last time. We came up just a little bit short. Maybe third time's the charm, I don't know. But I think as every time the application is refined, it's better. And I think that bodes very well. But you're right, this is a very, very competitive process. So what we have to do is just keep talking up the benefits, the need, the critical nature, and not just for convenience, but for safety. Mm-hmm. And it's absolutely critical for the community to have a safe way to travel around town. And so I think that's our I guess charge is to make sure that the pertinent agencies understand how important this is. And so with your help of making sure that we educate people enough, like I said, there's a whole new group of people in some of these agencies that we need to familiarize with our challenges and our priorities. And I'm all in and helping to make that happen and make this a reality. I think it's way overdue.
I'm on it
Councilman?
too. And just so you know, I think I have won Secretary Pete Buttigieg's heart. I don't know how you say that all, because when he was in Washington State, I brought him several Cosmic Crisp apples, and I said,
Oh, very
these
good.
are from Wenatchee. They're amazing. You know, you're getting the first ones because I think it was in December last year.
Yeah.
So he knows the city. He's got you in his thoughts, and I feel like I've got a little bit of an in there to tell him just how important it is for the city where the Cosmic Crisp apples come from.
Well, and those Cosmic Crisp need to travel along that loop to get where they go so they can get
That's
back
right.
to you in DC. So, well, we're just 1 minute past 6 p.m. I want to thank you both. This was incredible for us to get to have both of you with us here. It is wonderful, not always the norm, to see Congress leaders, congressional leaders, I guess is the better term, representing two. Congresswoman Schrier, your district's so unique. It's urban and rural all in one. It straddles both sides of the cascade, which is such a neat and yet challenging way to be. But Congressman also having a lot of rural natures, but then kind of that little connection to some urban centers here up north. We just appreciate you being both with us so we can hear from both of you and really see that there is synergy between the two of you. I'm sure there's differences as well, but you know, Washington has 10 representatives and 2 senators like every other state, and you all need to be a great team if we're going to get any slice of any action coming out of DC. So thank you for working together. Thank you for joining us. We really do appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Shiloh, and thank you, Sasha, behind the scenes. Thank you to all of you for spending the last
We
hour.
did a little happy dance there when you mentioned the Secretary of Transportation. I think if you got him to come tour your district, Sasha would lose her mind for a day. So I don't know.
I'll see what I can do. We're definitely on, he knows who I am and we're on a friendly basis. So I might be able to do just like the gentlest of arm twisting. I feel good about this. So anyway.
Well, and
Thank you.
Congressman, we hope to have you out again speaking to our community leadership about agriculture someday. They were super impressed by that. So we appreciate the attention you're giving our little chamber in this neck of the woods. It's been an honor. So have a great night. We look forward to working with you in the coming year.
Thank you all very much. It's a pleasure to join with you, Kim. This was fun.
Good to see you, Dan.
All right.
Thank you, Shiloh.
Thank you, guys.
Take care, you guys. Thank you very much.
All right. Bye-bye.